Welcome back to another opportunity to learn, grow, and evolve together as we are continuously uncovering the power and the peace that we have within ourselves. It's just been suppressed, but it's there. You know, I know. And today I am joined by a very good friend and somebody who is doing this work constantly and has done a ton, Krystal Lundin. She is a close friend that I met a few months ago while I embarked on this coaching course known as iPEC. Krystal is a coach. She is studying compassionate inquiry. She is an absolute warrior in terms of the work that she has done for herself. And I am honored to join her here in Mexico, Tulum, Mexico today. And aside from the coaching and all of that stuff that you're doing now, she has a pretty incredible story that led her to the place that she's currently at. So instead of taking up all the time to speak, why don't you share, some of the things that you're doing currently, and then I'd love to hear, obviously, about the story of where you started and how you arrived to this warrior goddess that you are today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm happy to share.
Yeah.
First, I want to say thank you so much for having me here. Actually, Marcello and I were each supposed to be in different places right now, and each of us had a trip that we were invited to that was canceled, and it ended up bringing us together here in Tulum at the same time.
Oddly synchronistic. Yeah.
Oddly. And I'm just so grateful that we're here. The energy here is just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I am really hoping with sharing my story and kind of where I've come from and where I am and where I'm going, that my story will really help and inspire others, and kind of show people that it doesn't matter what you come from or where you come from.
Right.
You can really decide for yourself that you get fed up with your own shit and really just want to relate to the world in a better way. I remember for me, I had a moment and I was like, what am I doing with my life?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just existing. I'm wasting it. And I want to live. I want to experience everything that life has to offer.
Yeah.
And
that's the intention here.
That
right?
is my intention.
It's like
to use my story to help others.
Exactly. And it goes to show like everybody is here supporting each other in one way or another. And now, as a result of the work that you've done, you have the ability to share the gifts that you have.
I do.
And your story is one of those gifts.
Absolutely.
So thank you. So I know I've gotten to hear pieces of this over the, past 4 months that we have been close and become friends, but I really want to know like what point A was for you. I know you told me a little bit about your childhood. Perhaps you can share with us what you experienced in your childhood, the traumas, the abuse that has really set the groundwork for where you are now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was born in Nebraska.
Yeah.
My mom was 20 years old when she had me. She had experienced a bunch of her own pain and trauma, and she was definitely not in a place to raise children in a healthy way when she had me. And my dad and her were involved in a short fling, and he was non-existent in my life. And so it was just my mom.
Yeah.
And she did the best she could, but it was
with what she knew.
Yeah, with what she knew. Unfortunately, it was not a good childhood for me or my brother and sister. I have a younger brother and sister. My sister's only 11 months younger than me, so we were really close in age.
Yep.
And so I came from that, and my mom did drugs most of my childhood. Well, actually, my first memories are of me trying to wake her up, and I couldn't wake her up, and I thought she was dead. And I was like 4 maybe.
Wow.
And so I had to call 911, and
Okay.
the cops came, and it took them like 10 minutes to wake her up, and she was not
These
happy.
are your first memories.
Yeah, that's my first memory.
Wow. Okay.
And
I didn't know that.
My childhood memories actually started when I was really young. Like, I think I want to say I was like 3.5, 4 years old.
Right.
And I have many memories, and unfortunately, when I go back and try and think of my childhood, the memories that I have are of the traumatic ones. And it's really interesting because I have really early memories my little sister, when she tries to remember our childhood, she hits a wall. She's a middle child, so I feel like she was kind of protected in a way from a lot by me.
Sounds like the trauma was also blacked out too, just in her mind. Yeah.
And so for me, I needed to be alert because I was always the one in charge. So I think for me, the memories that stuck out were those traumatic ones because it helped me stay on alert. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. And I don't know that that's
you had to show up to the scene
Yeah,
every time because you had 2 other people to be taken care of.
Absolutely.
Including yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're a child.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just a little baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally.
So my mom kind of took us along on all of her
journeys
with abuse. She was in a lot of abusive relationships.
She was.
Yes, absolutely. And that looked like abuse for us. And I remember this one relationship, and I've never actually shared this with you. She was with this guy, and we lived on this farm, and it was a very abusive situation. And he, my mom wanted to leave him one night. We were finally going to leave him again. And he pulled out a gun and held us there hostage for hours.
And how old were you?
Oh, maybe 6 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And finally, one of his friends came over. I can't remember if my mom got a hold or how it happened, but he came over and he got him to go inside. And we left, and we left right away. And I think we went to a shelter. That was one of the times we were in a shelter. And that kind of that was a really traumatic experience, you know? So these are this is what I'm looking, or this is what's being modeled to me. This is this is what a relationship looks like,
you know? Yeah, at 6 years old.
Yeah.
And it's every story that you share with me, I'm the warrior that I referred to you as multiple times now just becomes deeper and makes more sense every single time, yeah.
You know, I'm really grateful for my resilience because somehow every situation that I've been through, I've always held on to hope. I remember even as a little girl thinking, this can't be it. One day there's something, it's going to be good one day. And I just always remember just knowing that one day it was going to be good. Even in my
just having that voice within yourself. Yeah, it's cool. And you had that from a young age.
And even in my teenage years when that voice, I didn't believe it. I just remember saying that there's no way I went through all of this to also just my whole life just to be this way. Yeah. And even though I didn't know if I believed that one day it was going to be better, I was just there's no way it's going to be this way, you know? So, anyways, back to my childhood. So we didn't have our dad. My mom was taking us all over the place with her. We never attended school for a full school year. Right. Sometimes we would get up and move in the middle of the night. And I remember the one time when that happened, I had my first friend that was my best friend. And she woke us up in the middle of the night and was like, we have to go. And I wasn't even able to say goodbye to her. So my childhood showed me very quickly that nothing lasts. Everything comes and it goes. And you better not get too close to anybody because it's just going to be gone. It's just going to leave. Right. My mom,
and your ability to relate also, you had mentioned to me with your mom, being able to express yourself or share emotions, it wasn't received.
Correct. So my mom would leave us a lot, and I had bad separation anxiety because I never knew when she was going to come back. I was always scared. And I would throw these horrible tantrums when she would leave us with babysitters. And it was shown to me very clearly that my feelings were not acceptable. They were not okay. It was embarrassing for her. And she just wanted me to stop. And she would get so angry at me. So that showed me that my feelings aren't acceptable. It's not safe to feel.
Or express.
Definitely not safe to express. Yeah. And my mom just wanted to do anything to escape from it at that point because
she had her own pain at the same time.
It was overwhelming. And having 3 kids, she doesn't know how to take care. She doesn't even know how to take care of herself. Right. So she's trying to do the best she can to take care of us, which is unfortunately not a good job at all. And so that's kind of created my emotional relationship to the world. And at this young age, all these things I'm experiencing, I am having so many needs that are being neglected. I'm being neglected. We're moving all over the place. We have no stability. Emotional abuse. I experienced sexual abuse on 3 different occasions. Just all the types of abuse you can think of. And this is shaping the way I view the world. This is shaping the person that I'm going to be. Right. So that's kind of a little bit.
And these are formative years too, you know,
Absolutely.
like on my channel we talk about like the conditioning and the core beliefs that come from parental figures between the ages of birth and 5 to 7 years old. And it's like these are the years where they could determine how you act and behave at 40 years old, at 50 years old, at 60
Well, they
years
do.
old.
So
Right.
what happens is when we don't have.
Unless you decide to
Correct.
recognize them and shift them for
Right.
yourself, you know?
But what that typically looks like is, or what that can look like,
Yeah.
is you experience these traumas, you have these unmet needs, you develop these coping mechanisms that are really unhealthy. But at that young age, when you're acting out, you're getting attention. When you're trying to change yourself so your parents, anybody will love you. So you're trying to be however you think they want you to be. And so what happens is these make us feel protected and safe at that young age. And then we take those with us because these are now how we cope with life.
This is how we felt safe before.
Yes.
This is how we're going to feel safe in the future.
So we take it with us because that's what we do.
Right.
And then as we get a little bit older, it just kind of starts becoming a subconscious thing that drives our life. And by the time we're in our 30s, 90 to 95% of our lives is lived in our is subconsciously lived. Those coping mechanisms are subconsciously driving every action that we make.
Can you say that percentage again?
Yeah. So 90 to 95% is lived in our subconscious.
Okay. And that goes along also with the science of like your brain being formed as almost fully by the ages of like 26, 27.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
But neuroplasticity is a thing. The
correct.
ability to
So,
shift.
And to touch on that, anybody can do that. Anybody can shift that. But what happens, unfortunately, with a lot of people is we exist, and I read this from a book called Healing Developmental Trauma.
Okay.
A beautiful book. And in
You
that
can find
book,
it in the links below.
absolutely. In that book, he talks about most people go through life uncomfortable. But it's just comfortable enough that to do anything different or to make changes would be more uncomfortable than the uncomfortability they exist in.
Right.
So they exist in this life that's uncomfortable. They're unhappy. They're repeating unhealthy relationships. They're, doing things that they regret. It's like a constant cycle, but that's more comfortable than the change. So unfortunately, a lot of people choose not to change because they're scared, and there's a fear of the unknown as well.
Right. Which is
I know
totally
what life
natural.
is like now.
Yeah.
What is life going to look like if I change this? Like, it's going to change everything.
Yeah.
That's scary for some. I mean, it was scary for me.
Right.
Fortunately, I got to this place where I was just like, what am I doing? Like, anything has to be better than this.
Yeah.
I was in a really low place, which I'll touch on.
Yeah.
And I finally got fed up with my own shit.
Yeah.
So, and I'm grateful.
And just as a friend too, like you say, fed up with your own shit, and I get it, like, right, like, because you're the one that's living out these behaviors and these actions and these thoughts and whatnot, and you were also dealt those cards,
Correct.
and you didn't have the choice on choosing which cards you were dealt. So,
Well, yes, that is true.
fed up
but
with your own
let's
shit, but fed up with
also-
the shit that was given to you also.
So we'll also kind of talk a little bit more about what
Yeah.
was given to me. But then, in my early teens
Yeah.
or late teens and early 20s, I kind of started creating my own traumas for myself.
Yeah.
Through my unhealthy coping.
Yeah.
I'm pushing people away. I'm seeking out unhealthy connections with people. It's just like, which created pain for me. So through my childhood years, we moved around a lot and never had any stability. We lived in a homeless shelter at one point.
You were in a foster home at one point.
Foster homes, yep. So finally my mom left us at this babysitter's for days, and the lady was like, I'm going to call the cops. I don't know what to do. I can't get a hold of your mom.
And how old are you at this point?
8, maybe, like 8, 9.
You're still young.
I was still a young
Still
one.
a single-digit midget.
Yeah, a single-digit midget. I like it.
Yeah.
And I walked down to the neighbors. There was a police officer who lived a couple doors down. I went and used his phone, called my grandparents. My grandparents called the cops. Then we went to a group home, and then that was our entry into the system. Fortunately, my aunt, my mom's sister, and her husband decided to take us in and foster us, so it kept us together and with family. So we went to live with her. I think my mom had gone to rehab, and she was trying to work on herself. And to kind of go back, I had experienced some sexual abuse as well in my younger years. And when I was with my aunt and uncle, unfortunately, my uncle started sexually abusing it. When I was there, I thought it was just myself. We found out later it was my brother and sister as well.
Okay.
But when I was there, I asked, our social worker came to do a checkup visit on us once, and I wanted to leave. And so the whole family's there, and she's asking how everything's going. And I was like, can we move somewhere else? And she was like, why? And I couldn't give her a reason, of course, because I was too scared to say anything.
Of course.
So I was like, I don't know, I just want to go somewhere else. And she was like, well, you're really lucky to be with family. And she's right, we were. So unless you have a good reason that you don't want to be here, then, you know, I want you to be here with your family.
Yeah. And you're coming to this also, like, you don't want to share with her what you're experiencing, also because you never felt comfortable sharing with your mom.
Correct.
And you were taught that expressing your feelings was not a safe thing to do. So
it's a burden.
It's a burden, but it's like you are taught that it's not the thing to do, that when you do it, you get met with either silence or abandonment. And so it's like, okay, I have this situation where I need to speak up and say something, but like I'm terrified to do it because of what I've learned
absolutely in
the past. Yeah.
And so from there, she said no. Yeah. So I started, there was all these feelings happening inside of me, and I started throwing these tantrums.
Yeah.
And just acting out really bad. And finally, they just couldn't take it anymore, so I went to a group home. And when I was in the group home, I finally spoke up and said something about what's going on. They sent a social worker. Social worker comes, is asking me all these very specific questions, and I was just so uncomfortable and scared. I couldn't say anything. And so the findings were that I was lying, and they decided that they were going to send me to therapy on the basis of that lie, and basically trying to get me to say that I was lying.
Yeah.
And that was really tough because, of course, I wasn't lying, and nobody believed me. And my mom, I think she did, but nobody believed her because of, you know, her own lifestyle that she lived. And so years later, in my mid-20s, I think when I was in prison, actually, which we'll talk about.
just like
I dropped a bomb on that.
Small bomb.
My uncle my aunt divorced him after that. My uncle was caught with a computer with child pornography on it, and finally went to prison. And but by that time, I mean, too little too late. My family came and told me, and they apologized and tried to, you know, that they felt bad.
After so many years of having had to sit with that.
Yep. Yeah. And of course, that I never felt really connected to my family. My grandma was kind of really my grandma and grandpa were really the only people. Everyone else I just felt really disconnected from. Yeah. And also why didn't, as I got older and kind of understood what was happening, I kind of resented them. Like, why didn't anybody step in and do anything? I remember, like, everybody knew what conditions we were living in. But of course, this is late 80s, early 90s. Like, you know, I feel like it was kind of even more taboo to get involved with family stuff. And so my family would help by, like, my grandparents bought a house and let my mom live in it, which turned into a crazy, like, drug den. Yeah. Like 15 people living in this 3-bedroom house. And, you know, they would bring food over. They would come and check on us. And, but so there was layers of resentment with them letting us live that way.
Yeah.
So
this seems like it's also like, you know, your mom, grandparents, it's generational.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and so as it's generational, it's like, even if you go from here to here, it's still the same generational habits and ways of raising a child or just behaving with your emotions or with your pain. And I don't know, I just feel called in like in this moment, like you are literally like seeing the line of this trauma and you're just like, nah, fuck that.
Yeah.
And you're cutting it, which is incredible. Yeah.
You know what? It is incredible, and I'm really proud of myself for the work that I've done, and the difficulties I've had to push through. A lot of my family judges. Well,
Yeah.
not a lot. Some of my family members judge. My mom judges very harshly.
Mm-hmm.
She's at this point she's sober, and my whole life has been filled with her getting sober and relapsing. So it's created a lot of like highs and lows. Like, oh, she's gonna be good this time, and then she doesn't. So unfortunately, she still has a very addictive like mindset. So her addiction shifts to religion when she's sober, and it is very, very harsh view on everything that's not Jesus and God. And I am actually not speaking with her right now because as I'm on this path where I'm trying to love and accept myself, I just can't have that energy that's like, you're not doing this the right way. This is bad. Like, just judging me because I'm trying to I'm trying to unlearn my harsh judgments of myself. And, it's, so.
It's challenging. And I'm sure, like, for her, it could also feel really painful because it's almost like you're unlearning a lot of what you learned from her.
Yes.
But it's so important, like the fact that you're able to set boundaries with your own family, like that's a challenging thing to do, and you're doing it because and you're prioritizing your own well-being, like.
Yes, and that's for a while I kept kind of going on this like merry-go-round of like trying to win everyone's approval because that's what I've done my whole life.
Yeah.
And I finally got to this point where I was just like, I want to do whatever is most healthy for me. And whatever that looks like for anybody else, that's, I know it sounds a little harsh, but that's not my concern. Like, my concern is to do what's most healthy for me. And
you'll be able to show up to those relationships with that much more power, though, and that much more peace and the ability to connect much further.
Well, and my hope is that my healing, there's a saying, your healing becomes a healing of those around you.
Yes.
So that's a big part of my hope is that, my people see me, even like people I have in my life, and they're like, they see what you have, they see the peace that you're finding, they see you changing, and they're like, what are you doing? How are you getting this? I want that, and then it turns into healing for them. The domino effect. Absolutely.
And that changes the world. That one thing literally changes the world.
The world needs us. The world needs each of us to really like look at ourselves and look at our lives and see like, how can I relate in a more healthy way? How can I help myself? How can I help the world?
Because each person has like we said in the beginning, their own unique story, but out of each unique story, like they came here with a specific gift to share. And that's what uncovering the power that we have, the peace that's within ourselves, like that's really what this is about. It's like you're getting to express yourself and make the world a better place at the same time. Like, great. There is no better win-win.
I mean, it feels, even on my journey, as like, I have friends reach out to me and tell me like some things I share on my Instagram really help them, or like help them come to terms with things. And even that, it feels good to know that the positivity that I'm sharing and the positive work I'm doing for myself is helping others.
Exactly.
And, I'm on a journey now of actually learning like, how do I help others? Like, how do I,
which you're great at, by the way.
Thank you so much. But now I how do I do this in a way that is that I could work with people like and really help them grow. So it's when I was like, okay, I want to be a life coach, and
shout out iPEC. Shout out iPEC.
It is an amazing program.
It really is. Program,
so that's kind of the journey I'm on. Right now.
Yeah, wonderful. And I don't want to, leave all the viewers on a cliffhanger here, because you did mention other pieces of your story.
I did.
And I know that they're formative in where you are currently at now. So after you had some of the experiences with your uncle and had the experiences with becoming older and having to start supporting yourself even more than you were already supporting yourself, you found yourself with an opportunity.
Absolutely. So I'm going to, since we kind of left off talking about foster care, I'll kind of go and I spent my teenage years in group homes, running away from group homes. I actually was in a juvenile detention center that was jail, for lack of a better word. It was locked. There was guards. They even sent me out of state because I would not stop running away from group homes. I was really running from myself, running from my feelings, running from just running. I don't know. I was just running.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of anger. My mom got sober and got custody back of my brother, sister, and I. And she was doing her best to be a good parent, and I was not having it. I was so angry, so resentful. Like, you're not going to tell me what to do.
Like, now you want to show up. Yeah.
I've been taking care of myself for my whole life.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing, you know.
Yeah.
So that was a really rough time for me. And so in my group homes, you can study a little bit quicker pace. I always really enjoyed learning. I graduated high school a year and a half early. And I had an academic scholarship to go to university. I was going to study pre-med, and I had this
I don't think I knew that.
Oh, you didn't? Yeah,
No.
I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician. I wanted to work with kids. I wanted to help kids, and in my mind, I was like, what better way to help people than to be a doctor? So
Yeah.
And plus, of course, my whole family was like, you either need to be a doctor or a lawyer because they make money, and you know they wanted me to make money. So. I had about a 9-month gap before I was going to start university, and I got released from this place I was at called Geneva, and I went home, and I was babysitting for this woman, and she would always go out and then bring people back to the house after she would party, or after they would go out and party, and I was introduced to this drug dealer, and my questions when I met him were around, how much money are you making? How does this work? And then for some reason I was just like, will you show me how? And he was like, obviously taken aback. He's like, are you serious? And I was like, yes, I am. And so he showed me how. And
what was he dealing at the time?
He was dealing meth, which it's really big in Nebraska.
Okay.
So I got I started selling meth, and I threw away my college scholarship. I did that for the next 3 years. And I was selling to a lot of these are like people. Dark, a lot of dark energy, like gang members and like just people who, it's just a dark energy. Yeah. And I ended up getting arrested and indicted, and I went to federal prison for 4.5 years. And that was really tough at that age. It felt like it was going to be forever, but I'm looking back and I'm so grateful for it because it really pulled me completely from everything that I knew and gave me an extended separation. And I really needed for that to happen. And so, yeah.
So when you ended up getting into prison, that was an extremely large wake-up call for you, I assume.
It was, absolutely. And you know, I was really fortunate when I was still in county jail. An older woman sat me down and she told me, you're not going to come out of prison the same way you went in. You're either going to come out better or you're going to come out worse. And so it's important to choose how you live in prison carefully because it's going to dictate the rest of your life. And so prison was tough. And federal prison, they'll send you anywhere in the United States. They sent me to West Virginia. Okay. And of course, none of my family could afford to make a trip out to West Virginia to visit me, so I didn't have any family family visits. In
4 years,
yeah, I had one visit, and that was when they transferred me to a prison in Minnesota because they were trying to get more women to be able to be in the Midwest because they didn't really have any women's prisons in the Midwest. So anybody from the Midwest was kind of just sent all over the place. So and
if I'm not mistaken, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do mean to interrupt you. You mentioned at one point that you had to do a 24-hour bus ride.
Yes, shackled and handcuffed.
Oh my God.
And those bus seats were not comfortable.
It's hard for me to almost imagine, you know?
And then in Indiana, this is winter time. In Indiana, all we had is our jumpsuits and these little sandal things. We had to give all of our personal property back. So we're in jumpsuits and whatever shower shoes they gave us. We're on the bus in Indiana. We switched buses, so we had to go from one bus to another in the freezing cold, and it was horrible. And then we were at this prison waiting for I think it was a week with none of our property, so we were existing on soap. It was a very tough time. It was a tough time. I mean, prison was a tough time, but you know, it's funny in prison. For me, you're surrounded by so many people, but I felt lonely there You know,
Yeah.
I was reading a lot. I used to read a book a day. I was a lot of reading, like
Wow.
quick. I was
Okay.
just reading so much that I was just getting better and better. And I was just like, I just became a really fast reader. And so I actually spent time doing some programs in prison as well. I did a culinary arts program and graduated from that. So we were actually cooking food for like the administrative and the higher ups, like the warden and all the other people. And I was in a program where we trained service dogs for kids with cerebral palsy, which was a really awesome experience. Unfortunately, I got transferred when I was in the middle of that program. So I could have stayed in that program for as long as I wanted, but then they transferred me to Minnesota. So I had to stop that program. And then when I went to the new prison, I did a program called RDAP, which is a residential drug abuse program.
Okay.
It takes time off. It takes like 9 months off of your sentence, or a year maybe, but it's a 9-month program. And that program taught me a lot about what are the ABCs of thinking?
The ABCs
Yeah,
of
so
thinking?
there's like something that happens to us, our belief about it,
And the consequence.
and the consequence. Yes, rational thinking. We learned quite a bit about our thinking there, but I still was very like didn't understand myself. I was disconnected from myself at that point still, and so I did my best to do good in prison.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like you were taking advantage of your opportunities and of your time. And although you said, like, you know, you're still very disconnected from yourself, it sounds like you were slowly, like, very slowly but surely getting more of an idea of that core crystal that you are embodying now.
I knew I wanted something different.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that looked like or what that was or even how to get there. But I was just like, I'm gonna do better when I get out. And so yeah, I get out of prison. Do you have any more questions about that experience?
Well, I mean, yeah, I do have a question for that. I mean, there's so much to dive into there. I'm sure we could have multiple podcasts on that experience alone. But are there any other pieces? You mentioned that you had one experience with this woman who gave you a life lesson to take away. But are there other like gems that you came across in these 4 years that like still are very powerful or guidance principles for your life today?
You know, I think it was just, I chose wisely the company that I kept in prison. I actually spent a lot of time around a lot of older, not old, but like a little bit older women.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for that now because I feel like maybe there wasn't anything that stuck, but I definitely feel like it kind of gave me a more mature approach and outlook.
Yeah.
But like that's really the one gem
That's
that
in
kinda
itself
sticks
is
out.
huge though. Yeah.
I used to play Scrabble with this woman every day, and she was so good, and I could not beat her. But she was like, "Are you done playing with me?" And I was like, "No, because when I finally beat you, it's gonna feel so good."
Yeah.
And when I finally beat her, it felt so good.
I mean,
It was so I did a lot of stuff like just being around that type of energy, and I feel like that was a lot better than, you know, all the girls who were caught up in the drama and like all this stuff happening. And of course I would get caught up in it from time to time, like, what's going on? Because there's always some exciting drama happening, and then we don't have anything to do, so any drama that happens is exciting.
But that's a smart decision though.
Yes.
Yeah, it really does sound like you took full advantage of your experience from my perspective anyway. And I can only imagine the experiences that you had and how to make the choices in that type of environment. But
so it was go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. No, I want to I know you were getting into the point of what it was like when you were starting to get out of prison. So
And I got out of the big house.
You got out of the big
and I went to a halfway house, and I was in this halfway house. I had nothing. I had a little bit of money that I'd saved up, like from working, because in the
prison.
Right. So they have a program, I can't remember what it's called now, but you work for, it's companies that contract the federal prison system to do things. So we made clothes for like the Air Force and the Army, and it was like, it's the highest paying job in prison. It's like $1, maybe $1, I can't remember what it was, like $1 or $2 per hour. Yeah, so you're working, and had saved up a little bit of money, and then you also, I'm sorry, you get $1. I can't remember. It's like $1 or $2 per hour, and then like commission or on the
That's
pieces.
wild.
It's crazy
Because that's even more than extreme poverty.
Yep.
You know, like extreme poverty is $1.87 a day, I think.
Yep.
That's
I mean, but
mind-boggling.
mind you, you can only spend X amount of dollars on commissary per month or something.
Of course, yeah.
The details are kind of fuzzy. It's been so long.
Yeah.
But still, it's like you have to budget. Okay, how many ramen noodles can I buy? How many stamps can I afford to buy? Like, so I can write my family. How many minutes can I afford to buy on the email system? Because they have an email system where you have to pay for minutes, and you can send emails and email with your family. How much can I afford to spend on the phone? Like, you're budgeting. Yeah, I didn't have family sending me a bunch of money from the outside.
Of course,
so.
you had to, again, provide for yourself.
Yeah. And so I get out of prison. I have just a little bit of money. I'm like, all right, I need to get a car. I need to get a job. I found this 1989 Geo prison that was just, I bought it for $500. And that little car was a piece of junk, but I'm so fortunate it never gave me any problems for I can't remember however long I had it. And I remember being in the halfway house, and I get out and I'm excited, and my family comes and they visit me in the halfway house, and my little brother and my mom had asked me for money because they're like, oh, you're getting all this stuff because I'm buying clothes. I'm buying like the essential things that I need because I had nothing when I came out. All of my stuff was lost. And I just remember being like, no, I'm not giving you any money. And my mom said something to me about how important family is, and we have to help our family. And I'm just like, I just got out of prison.
You've been in prison for 4 years, and you only got to be visited once.
Yeah. And so right away, it's like feeling guilty, like for doing, I wasn't going to give them money, but I feel very guilty about that, you know, because my mom's like, oh, we're over here struggling, like telling me how bad my brother's doing and telling, you know, so it's like giving me this guilt. So it's like trying to make me feel like I need to take care of everyone again, you know? And
immediately.
Yes,
no
absolutely.
time wasted.
And I had to, so many times I had to tell like my brother and my mom, like, I can't give you money. I don't have money to give you this. I work hard for this money, like, and I don't have a lot. I was working in a restaurant, you know, as a supervisor, and you know, it's like I need this money. I need what I have for myself. And so, you know, so much of my life was centered around wanting to do things, being told that I can't, or it's not the right decision, feeling shameful, you know, like it's just kind of like this cycle of like shame, guilt.
And when was the moment that you started to shift out of this and recognize that you needed something different?
So I was in a relationship with this guy that I met maybe a couple of months after I got out of prison. I got into a relationship right away because I didn't want to be alone. And of course, my attachment style was, oh, I meet someone I like and we're in a relationship. And a few months later, we move in together. And so that relationship was 4 years on and off. And I had a unhealthy like attachment style, which I'll share a little bit about. I discovered when I finally learned about attachment theory that I had a fearful avoidant attachment style, which is where I yearn for connection and intimacy deeply, but when I have it, I push it away. So because it's not safe, because that's what I've learned through all of my life experiences. So I was in this relationship, and I would go through these cycles where I would just be acting out. I wanted to be free. So I'm like wanting to text other people and do this and that. And of course but I was dishonest with him about it. And so I would create this cycle where I would push him away and hurt him. And then he would be upset with me. And then it would trigger my anxious, the fearful part of my attachment style, where I was like wanting to get into his good graces and be saying, I'll do anything to win you back, because I didn't want to be alone. And so that looked like, then he would finally take me back and he'd be like, okay, but we're going to have all these, then he would add on more restrictions or things I couldn't do. And then I would go back with him, and then I would realize how miserable I was doing all of these things that he wanted me to do. And then I would look for ways to run from it. So repeating this cycle over
Negative
4
feedback
years,
loop.
more and more toxic, you know, more and more painful. I was just finally like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to stop doing this. I don't want to do it anymore. And my grandparents had retired to Arizona. I've always been really close to my grandparents, and my grandfather passed away in 2015.
Okay.
And my grandma was really going through it in Arizona. She was having a tough time. She was living in this little town out in kind of like a country setting. And the idea just came to me, and I was like, I asked my grandma, I'm like, what would you think if I said maybe I would move down here and, you know, spend some time with you? You know, she was like, I think that would be a really, really good idea. And so I just decided that I was going to just leave Nebraska and go be with my grandma. And so that was when that's when I realized that I wanted something different and I was going to do it. And so I left Nebraska behind.
Total change of scenery too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, the great thing about moving to a new place on your own, and I recommend that people do this, is it gives you an opportunity to get to know yourself on a level that you just can't. You have all the same people that you know, the familiar things that you keep around you because you're comfortable.
They keep you tied into a specific version of yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then you leave that, and I go to Arizona, and then you really find out who you really get to know yourself. You don't have anybody else telling you this is what you should do or how you are, who you are. And for me, that looked like a scared, lost person, and who was just scared of her feelings. And so I wanted something different, and I got it. Then I get to Arizona, and all of this stuff kind of starts bubbling to the surface. And I don't want to feel that. I meet this guy. He was a club promoter in Arizona, in Scottsdale, and I was introduced to cocaine, and I was in a toxic relationship with him and with alcohol and cocaine for about a year and a half. And I mean, it got to the point, the cocaine just helped to numb me. The alcohol.
Yeah, especially if you were scared and lost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there was one point where maybe 4 or 5 nights a week, my family was worried, like friends were worried, and I finally got to this place where I was just like, what am I doing? Like, I had quit my job because it was getting in the way of my partying, and I was relying on this guy I was, you know, seeing, and that, of course, another situation where I'm relying on a guy or relying on someone else outside of me, and it's controlling me because I need this person.
Which is a natural desire after you've been holding up the fort for yourself the whole time otherwise.
Yeah, you know what, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And
I got a couple more good points for you.
Please share them.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to do something different.
Yeah.
And that's when I was really like, okay, I need to do something different.
Yeah.
And so I get on Facebook, and I was just like, I'm going to move somewhere, and I'm going to commit to doing something better, because I tried to do it in Arizona, but I just kept finding myself back with all of my old party friends. And I realized also that these aren't my real, I mean, some of them were my real friends, but these are just my party friends. Like, I can't call them and be like, I'm struggling, I need support, you know, because, you know, so I was just like, I'm going to move somewhere, and I'm making a commitment to myself that I'm going to do better.
Yeah.
And so I get on Facebook and make a post, and I had a friend in Dallas who was like, come here and you could stay with me, I have an extra room. And I literally I originally just packed my stuff, left it in my grandma's garage, and flew to Dallas, Texas, and moved in with a girlfriend. And so...
And now you live in Houston, so you're not too far away.
I'm not too far, right down the road.
Yeah.
And when I was in Dallas, that kind of brought even more to the surface. But I even at first started going back out in the nightclubs, like the regular nightclubs, but I was like, I was realizing that it wasn't fun like it used to be, and I was like, why are you here? You don't want to be here. But really, I was just trying to like go out and do anything because I didn't want to be alone. And so, then I was a couple of months after after I'd moved to Dallas, I was out with a girlfriend, and we were at a club, and she's like, we were bored, and she's like, do you want to go to a warehouse party? And I was like, what's a warehouse party? And she's like, let's get up, let's go, we're leaving. So we go to her house and change, and we go to a warehouse party. It's an underground party with house music. They go all night long. And that was also my introduction to like house music. There's, you know, I'd been introduced to EDM, like, but I was introduced to good house music. Yeah. And I was also introduced to psychedelics, and I just remember something in me changed. I'm on the dance floor. I'm feeling things I've never felt, hearing this music I've never heard. And it's just like everything's just coursing through my body, this energy. And it was just like, I'm following this.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is, but I want more of this. And so that started a kind of a several months of me going to house music parties, like just being in the music, being around the people, like exploring myself with psychedelics. I tried mushrooms, LSD.
And I'm sure this gave you an entirely different understanding of you.
Yeah, I mean, it was, it did. LSD kind of, mushrooms showed me how disconnected I was from myself. LSD showed me initially, these were some big, like, scary in the moment sometimes when you're shown these things, because that's what psychedelics are there for, to show you things about yourself, to help you grow and evolve. And LSD showed me how scared I was of the unknown, and it was always a fear of death, but what that was really was a fear of the unknown and letting go of my control. So it was a lesson for me about needing to surrender so that I could, you have to experience a death of sorts, a death of that part of yourself in order to step into the next phase of your life. And that's unknown and it's scary. So
but these aided in that journey.
They did. And then DMT, which I had done a couple of times, really was a game changer for me. So as I'm exploring like all these psychedelics, I have all of these like unhealthy parts of me that are coming out, and I'm still like, I don't know what these are, and I'm like still like, I'm trying to do good, but I don't know what good is, and I'm like still like have all these fears. So DMT I had done a couple of times, and the third time I had done it, and I had beautiful experiences. Beautiful experiences. The third time I experienced an ego death. Okay. And in this trip, I watched the first layer of my ego that was keeping me from like wanting to do this. I was just like too scared, and I was like, I'm not going to do it.
The fearful spot of you. Yeah.
I literally watched that first layer of my ego die in front of me. Like it was me that was like fighting it. Yeah. She was kicking and beating her legs on the ground and just like shaking her head. And I just remember I was feeling so scared because I was fighting. I was holding on to it. I thought I was dying in my. Right. So in this trip, I finally had to just surrender. I was tired of fighting. And so I just said, okay, this is it. I thought I died, really. Yeah. And I was like, this is existence after death. And everything got really peaceful. And then all of a sudden I'm in this space with these beings, and they're dancing around me, just like this crazy dance. And I'm like, and I look back now, and I feel like it was like a celebration of me, like accepting and surrendering to that.
And coming into this next version of yourself.
And I was just like, all right, I guess this is what I'm going to do after I die. And then I remember it just kind of faded, and then I started floating down to my body. I was gone. I don't know where I went. I was alive. I was safe. I was healthy. Everything was okay. Yeah. But my soul went somewhere. Yeah. And I came back down and into my body, and I was just like, I remember I was like, what am I doing with my life? I didn't know what it was that I wanted, but I was like, I want to do things differently. I don't want to exist anymore. I want to live. And I don't know what that looks like, but I'm gonna figure it out, and I'm gonna do it. And so I made that decision, and that of course so much more of me was exposed. Yeah. So there was a period for maybe like 4 or 5 months where I was just make really, really unhealthy choices, because my ego wants to protect me and keep me how I am, because that's the safe way to be. So I was in a relationship, and another unhealthy repetition of these cycles of running and coming back, and finally we ended things, and I was in a really dark place. I didn't really have anywhere to go. I found a woman on like some app, and I roomed with her, and I was just in a really tough spot, and I just finally got to this place where I was just like, I want something different, like, and I don't know what that is, but this is how far I've gotten myself on my own. And I I feel like I need some outside guidance. And so I finally decided to see a therapist. And my ex, who finally was just like, I'm done with your shit, was like, you need to go to therapy. And so I found a therapist, and I couldn't even afford therapy at that time. For anybody out there who says I can't afford therapy, I got to a point where I was like, I'm going to rearrange my priorities so that my therapy is with my rent and phone bill, which we have to pay.
Yeah.
Rent, phone, therapy. And I was just like, I couldn't afford therapy. I went online, found a therapist, and I told her, I was like, this is where I'm at. I really want to change. I don't know how. Like, I need help, and I can't afford your rate. Can you work with me? And I was like, I promised to come and, come to my sessions and do the work. And she reached out to me like within the hour and was like, how soon can she was like, I want to see you right now.
Yeah. Well, because she could probably sense your actual desire. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
The fact that you're going to put the work in.
Mm-hmm. And so I can't remember if it was that day or the day after. We had a session like right away. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of like the start of this journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in those days, trust me, this has been I started therapy 3 years ago in November, so it's been almost 3.5 years now. It has been a journey, and in the beginning,
it
was hard.
Incredible.
It is. It's so amazing, and it's hard because it can be hard to be shown those parts about ourselves. We like to think like, oh, I have bad partners. I have this that's outside of me. But what we do in therapy is you're shining a light inside, because everything that you're choosing outside of you or that you're attracting is
a result of the inside.
Is a result of what's inside of you. Yeah. And so in order to heal those areas, you have to shine a light in there, and it's uncomfortable at first. And I will tell you, it was uncomfortable for a while, but I just kept going, and I just was like, I just trusted that it was going to get better. And then I remember the first time I experienced a shift where I noticed that when something was difficult, I handled it in a more healthy way than I would have in the past. Yeah. And that felt like
that's the reward right there.
It was, yeah. And it wasn't anything major, but even just that, it was like, oh wow, there's something's happening. Yeah. Yeah. And I just felt so happy. It was so rewarding. Yeah. And I was just like, I'm gonna keep going, and I kept going. And every time, even when I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore, I just want to be oblivious. I remember having that feeling so many times, like, I just want to go back to just doing whatever I want to do. Yeah. But once I started, I was like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that anymore, because you're just going to go back to the same old stuff. We're going to keep going and seeing where this path takes us. And so I just made a commitment to keeping on. Yeah. And even when I would have backslides, because we do, and to anybody who's walking this journey yourself, don't give up. When you have those times where you find yourself making those same decisions, and you're just like, oh, and there are times when you want to give up, and you're just like, for me, it's called a fuck it mentality. And you're just like, well, I can't do this. That's our inner critic and our ego trying to protect us and keep us safe. So many different things, layers of it. Keep going. And you don't have to give up. You could say, all right, you know what? Yeah, that isn't what I wanted to do. I can do better. I know I can do better, and I'm gonna keep going, because I'm gonna do better. Yep. And yeah, just a little message for anyone out there who's on their own journey. And
yeah, which I assume if they're listening to this, they are on their own journey. Yeah. Yeah. So your story with therapy also is similar to mine, where I made it a very main priority, like along with, all the other major expenses of life, to the point when I graduated high school is when I needed therapy really bad, and I knew it for myself instead of somebody else telling me to do it. I got maybe a couple $1,000 like for my graduation from college. Every single dime was spent on therapy.
Wow.
For my graduation of college, every single dime.
Wow.
Yeah. like a couple $1,000s, I think, maybe a few
I
thousand.
mean, that's a lot of money when you're graduating high school.
When you graduate,
I mean,
my God,
you're basically
yeah,
rich
like,
with a couple $1,000s at high school.
and I spent every dime on therapy, and I
I
was
applaud
like,
you for that. That's amazing.
this is, like you said, you're like, this is it.
Yeah.
And you get out what you put in, as long as you're with the right therapist. And I want to put this out there too, is if you are looking for a therapist, on my my YouTube channel here, you can find a video I made on how to find a therapist for you, because you can go out there and find a therapist, but if you find the wrong therapist, which I have done a few times, they could make the journey a little bit more challenging than it needs to be. So finding someone that aligns with you is really important.
And you can treat therapy kind of like dating. Like you go to first sessions and you see how it feels, and you don't have to, just because you went and saw that therapist, you don't have to keep seeing that therapist. Right. In fact, the person you're working with would rather have you go and look for someone to see someone else
right.
who works better for you, because really at the end of the day, the therapist is there to help you grow and wants to see you grow and improve.
Exactly.
So that's another thing, is I hear so many people, well, I went to someone and it just wasn't a good fit, and then they just stopped going, and then they just stopped going to therapy. Right. Which, that's okay if they're not a good fit. Keep looking.
Yeah. It's all in the process.
Yes.
I have it all filmed.
The
I also have an article.
Is in the process.
I can put it down.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, I have like a whole process that I follow to find the right person, and like writing the values and like doing the research to find somebody who fits with you, then having the discovery calls, like with each one, like I had a list of 4 people, and I had a call with each of them. Wow. To figure out, okay, like this person, not that person, not that.
Wow, you did it right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I learned the first time. But to wrap up here, and to honor our time together, this is only part 1. Yes. This is not the whole thing. Speaking of psychedelics and getting into this conversation, Krystal actually has a very exciting journey with what is known as ayahuasca, coming up later this month. Yes. In Peru. And if you guys are not familiar with any of these psychedelics that we're referring to, there's a lot of information out there that you can check out online. Mm-hmm. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your ayahuasca, and then leave us on a cliffhanger. Okay. I want you to leave us on a cliffhanger so that we have something that we're looking forward to.
So I am journeying to Sacred Valley in Peru, March 24th to the 31st, for a week to sit with ayahuasca in San Pedro. So we will journey 3 times with ayahuasca and once with San Pedro. Mm-hmm. And I am really looking forward to the experience. It is ayahuasca and San Pedro are both very healing. Mm-hmm. Medicines, and my intention is to really connect with myself and to let go of quite a bit. Even in therapy or the work that I've been doing, I'm making progress, but there's just some areas where I'm just having I'm having a really hard time letting go of my resentment to my mom. I would like to release that some. I would like to fully release it, but I know that it's a process. But I would like to relate to my feelings in a more healthy way with her. Yeah. Right now, my point of view is like, oh, she needs to change, And even though I understand that that's not the most healthy way to view it. Inside, I'm just like, she needs to change. Yeah. So I'm hoping to shift my understanding, because I believe in order for me to have a healthy relationship with her would require me to accept her as she is and not be so emotionally reactive when she's judging me or doing these things that I don't like. So my relationship to the situation has to change. My understanding has to shift. I would love to have a relationship with my mom. Mm-hmm. I can't have a healthy relationship with her the way that I am right now. Every time we talk, we're screaming and yelling at each other. Yeah. So I have some intentions set around some healing and connection to myself, and really loving and accepting myself, because really loving and accepting of myself is how I can really love and accept others. Right. It always starts with us. Of course. We can't give or do anything for anyone that we can't give or do to ourselves. Mm-hmm. So the ayahuasca will do 3 journeys in the evening, the ceremonial, and San Pedro will be done on the day before the last, during the day, in nature, to help us process and integrate everything we experienced, felt, and saw in ayahuasca. And we actually have another intention setting call this Saturday, and we had our first one about 6 weeks out. And there's a long process. There's a diet that we have to, well, not only have to, I want to adhere to, because I want to have the best possible experience and the experience I'm meant to have. And it requires removing a lot of different things, different foods, any type of partying you do, removing that. 2 weeks out, no sexual activity of any kind. You being very mindful what you're even watching on TV. I already logged out of my social media. I just want to remove any energy that's not going to help me reach my highest good, or I don't know the best way to say that. I don't want to say that part.
Reaching your core self.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm removing anything that's not helping me reach my core self, and anything that's a distraction, that's keeping me distracted. So
when really it's like a paradox, because everything is our teacher in some way, shape, or form. Yeah,
that's a really good point. It is.
Yeah.
But right now I am trying to kind of lean heavily into myself, because I think that's going to be such an important part of the experience the experience I'm going to have, is leaning into my own understanding and my own wisdom. And it's going to help me stay grounded. I'm meditating more, I'm doing breath work and working out, and I really want to be able to stay grounded when I'm in the midst of whatever experience I may have. And so I think it's important to follow the diet, and
everybody will have the pre-Krystal, and the post-Krystal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I really look forward to sharing like my journey and the path that I've been on. I will say this past year, and I'll share more about it, has been the most accelerated year of my growth. I am just shedding things left and right. Anything that doesn't serve me on my journey of growth, it just has to go,
Yeah.
And I've experienced some very interesting things this last year, and beginning of the year, to end the last year and bring in this year, I went and did a 10-day silent meditation retreat called Vipassana. For those of you who aren't aware of it, you go and you are at a center and you are meditating for about 10.5 hours per day with some breaks in between, and you're silent. No, you're not even supposed to really make eye contact with anyone. This is supposed to be time for you. And I went and sat with Combo last week in preparation for some energy cleansing, and it was such a beautiful experience. And the work that I'm doing is preparing me. Everything's kind of been preparing me for this experience that I'm going to have this month. And I really think that that's going to set the stage for me to really go out into the world and claim my power strongly, and shift my focus kind of from, I've been so focused on my own inner journey, and I think that it's going to allow me to enter into a space where I have the capacity to now start shifting my energy outward. And okay, now how can I take this and help the world? How can I use my story? How can I, now that I'm healing, how can I use this as a resource to pull from to help others now? Right. So I believe that this experience is just going to help me really step into my power, and looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to sharing it with you.
Yeah. And we'll have part 2 up maybe in a few months from now. But it's been an absolute pleasure for you to join us and share more of your story. And each time that I sit with you, it's like I learn more about the story, and I learn more of the why behind what you're doing now. With that said, you guys will be able to find Krystal when she's done doing her social media cleanse and she's come back to, interacting. You'll be able to find all of her information down below in the links. And I just want to say thank you again. If, guys, you found this provocative, you have questions, you want to talk about something, leave us both a message, either in the comments down below or maybe more privately through an Instagram message.
And also, to add to that, if you see this story and you find it helpful for you, or you think that it might help someone else, please share it. That's, there's so much power in sharing our experiences and our stories with others,
right.
And so much inspiration and growth can come of that. So please share this if you feel called to.
if you really feel called, even leave a like and a subscription.
I mean, yes, definitely.
Well, with that said, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to hearing more about what happens in this ayahuasca experience. I'm grateful I've gotten now almost 2 weeks, maybe a whole week's worth of time to spend with you beforehand. And we'll continue to share our conversations, and we will see you very soon in the next video or in our messages. Much love. Thank you.
Thank you.